Hello everyone. This game is played between the former world chess champion Boris Spassky and Sergey Avtonomov in the Soviet Junior Qualifiers in 1949 at Leningrad, Russia. Uh, Spassky is not a world champion at the time when he played this game because it's in 1949, but Spassky became the world champion in 1969. But this game illustrates a wonderful concept of sacrificing the IQP for a devastating attack at the right moment. So you may wonder what is IQP if you're new to chess. IQP is nothing but the isolated queen pawn which arises in Queen's Gambit, accepted opening a lot of times. And without any further ado, let's get into the video. And in this position, Boris Spassky is playing white and Sergey Avtonomov is playing black. And Spassky opened the game with to d4. Black responded with d5. Black played c4 and black accepted the pawn, and this is known as the Queen's Gambit accepted variation. Spassky developed the knight to f3, and black played the move knight f6, and Spassky played e3, which is a classic way to regain the pawn, and black strike the center with the move c5. Spassky captured the pawn. Black played the move e6, and white castled. Black played the move a6. This a6 move has an idea to expand on the queen side because this a6 followed by b5 takes a lot of space on the queen side with this pawn mass and forces this bishop to move away from this diagonal and maybe eventually to c2. And this move also has a purpose to develop the bishop to b7. Spassky played this queen to e2 move, which is known as the Alekhine system of the Queen's Gambit, accepted and classical defense. But black played this move knight c6 in this position, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. There are right now, sorry about that arrow, there are right now three attackers to the d4 pawn, and the d4 pawn is only defended twice. And white played the move knight c3, not defending the pawn. But black played this move b5, first chasing this bishop away from the c4 square. White dropped the bishop back to b3, and black captured the pawn on d4. You may say, is this pawn lost? We are only attacking the pawn twice, and black still attacks twice, and so we cannot recapture. So the pawn on d4 is lost. But no, white played this move rook to d1, pinning this pawn to the queen, adding another attacker. So right now we have three attackers, and black has only two defenders, so we can easily regain the pawn back. So black just developed the bishop to b7. But bishop to b7 in this position is considered an inaccuracy, and the best move in this position is to play knight to a5 and go after this bishop, because this bishop is controlling the d5 square and putting a lot of pressure to the center. But black played this move bishop to b7, which is an inaccuracy, and white recaptured the pawn on d4. So now the material is equal. Black played this move knight to b4. Again, knight to b4 in this position is another inaccuracy by Avtonomov. The best idea in this position is still to go knight a5 and eliminate this light squared bishop, or make this bishop to fall back and lose the central control. But black played the move knight to b4, and this is an instructive move played by Spassky in this position. Spassky played the move d5. This d5 move is a common theme you can find in the isolated queen pawn structure. You may ask, what is an isolated pawn? This pawn on d4 is known as an isolated pawn. This pawn has no neighboring pawns on e file and the c file to support to the d4 pawn. So this pawn can only be defended by the pieces. It cannot be defended by any other pawns. And this isolated pawn has advantages and disadvantages. It gives a lot of open files, a lot of open file diagonals to attack, But at the same time, if you lose the pawn, as this pawn is weak, white will suffer a material deficit, and if the attack is not strong, may eventually lose the endgame. So a common theme in isolated queen pawn structures is to control the square in front of the pawn and blockade this isolated pawn and slowly win this pawn by trading pieces, because only the pieces can defend the pawn. And the common theme for the player with the IQP is to push this pawn at the right moment and trade this pawn so that we have no weakness but still we enjoy the open files and diagonals. So it's simple, right? So in this position, Spassky d5. You may ask, wait, you're defending once, twice, and thrice. Uh, but black is attacking the d5 square once, twice, thrice, and four times. Okay, this e6 pawn cannot attack because it's pinned right now. But still, this leads to a loss of the d5 pawn, right? Yes, this is a temporary pawn sacrifice. Black captured the pawn on d5, but we play the move bishop to g5. This move pins the knight to the queen, and this removes one of the defenders of the d5 square, which is a key square in this position, and this also develops the bishop, which is on c1 undeveloped. So this is a multi-purpose move. Black played the move bishop e7, and guess what Spassky played? Spassky just played bishop takes f6, eliminating one of the defenders of the d5 square, and this pawn has to be captured. This bishop has to be captured with the g pawn. It cannot be captured by playing bishop takes f6. You all know knight cannot capture because the knight is pinned to the queen. The queen will be lost. It also cannot be captured with the bishop because if it is captured by the bishop, this d5 square becomes so weak and this e6 pawn is now pinned right now. If the bishop is on e7 and the g pawn captures on f6, the pawn is not pinned and it can recapture on d5 at any time. But if it is captured like this, with this pin intact, we can play bishop takes d5, hitting the bishop. Bishop has to capture. We can capture back. And if you see, we are up two pieces. Black cannot capture like this because it is pinned. And black cannot also capture with the queen because we capture the queen with the rook and we will get a free queen. So white will emerge victorious in this position. So black cannot capture with the bishop. So you have to see these 2-3 moves and you have to understand the position better. So black played this move g takes f6. And guess what Spassky played? We anyway played knight takes d5. And after bishop takes d5, we played bishop takes d5. Queen cannot capture. So black played the move e takes d5. And look at this position. Right now black is up a pawn, but black's pawn structure is totally in shambles. See, this is an isolated d pawn. These are doubled isolated pawns on f7 and f6, and there is an isolated pawn. So the entire king side is totally weak for black. And look at white's pawn structure. It's it's wonderful. And we also have another idea in this move. That is to go knight to d4 and go to knight to f5, as this e pawn stopped defending the f5 square. So we can maneuver knight to f5 and put pressure on the bishop, and we can even eventually win that bishop and control the g7 square and somehow get the queen to the h6 square, and black will be lost on the king side. And there is also another purpose to this. So this knight can also jump to c6 square, hitting the bishop and hitting the queen, and the knight on c6 or f5 will be a monster knight. Okay, that's the idea behind this position. And Sparky played knight d4 with the intentions of that. The best move for black is to play queen to d7 to stop both of these key squares, that is uh, the c6 and the f5 square for the knight to jump in. And why we would have played white would have played rook to e1, putting this wonderful pressure on the bishop, and the game continues like king to f8. Black cannot castle. This king to f8 is to bring the rook to e8 and defend this bishop. But what black played in this position is he played king to f8. Now this is a mistake because in this position we can jump with the knight to the f5 square. So Spassky played knight f5, putting pressure on the bishop on e7. Black played this move h5. This h5 move disallows the queen to somehow enter to the h6 square, or the queen can even come to h5 and enter to the h6 square. So that's one of the purpose of that move, but this move is a mistake. The move looks logical, but it is a mistake. Because in this position, Spassky played the move rook takes d5 because this queen is overloaded. This queen was protecting the d5 pawn and also the e7 bishop. So there is no other choice for black. Black just desperately captured the rook, and Spassky captured the bishop on e7 with check, forcing the king to move to g8 and captured the pawn on f6, threatening mate on g7, which is unstoppable, and black resigned in this position. If you see black, you may think, okay, black can go to king f8, but queen takes h8 is checkmate. So in this position, in order to not get checkmated, black has to lose his queen on f5. And then we recapture the queen back and we have a queen and rook, but black has only two rooks, so we are up material and we can easily destroy this king by uh, lifting the rook up and attacking like this, or even landing the rook on the 7th rank and putting pressure. So seeing all this, black resigned in this position and Spassky emerged victorious. And this game serves as an classic example of sacrificing the IQP at the right moment to get a wonderful attack and a positional advantage. If you like the video, consider subscribing to the channel and leave a like. Thank you.